Cool. So we'll get the recording started and we'll officially get started. So welcome y'all to our last METAS Transfer Prep Academy workshop, specifically around like the UC TAG program and the Transfer Admission Planner. So some two very important tools and resources. As housekeeping, right, since it's a more intimate group, y'all are welcome to ask questions in the chat or direct message me throughout the presentation. I'll get to it as soon as I can. And hopefully throughout, we'll have certain breaks where we can chit chat and gauge of like where folks are at. Um, so yeah, take care of yourself, get comfy. It is going to be a lot of information. So hopefully this, again, it's just the beginning and whichever point you are at, here to support with whatever you need. And before I introduce myself, just as a disclaimer, and been sharing this at the other workshops as well, but a lot of this information, again, general information today, and I always encourage students to follow up with your counselor, follow up with the transfer center with any information that you've learned for these presentations, because again, things vary by major, by student. Everyone's path is very unique. Transfer universities, right? So encourage you all, any information that you learned today, to check in with your counselor and learn more, right? So a little bit about myself. My name is Angelica, one of the counselors at Berkeley City College, specifically works within the Undocumented Community Resource Center, proud first-gen Latinx student, proud product of the community college system, started my journey at community college and then transferred to UCLA. And when it comes to TAG, I look back and in my journey, I was unaware of the transfer admission guarantee program, agreement guarantee program. And I actually missed the deadline to apply to tag to a university, to a UC. And at that time, I was eyeing Davis, which participates in tag. And my major was sociology. So I look back and I wish that I would have taken advantage of programs like tag, even though we can still apply right without tag. But that's kind of like a little bit about me of like my own experience with tag, didn't tag because I had missed the deadline. And commend you all for being here today, learning more information around tag. Um, so yeah, here to support with you ever you all need. And if I don't know the answer, we'll definitely follow up and get those answers. Um, I guess before we get started, I'd love to check in with folks here today and get a sense of where everyone's at. So I am curious if folks can share in the chat. Um, like, first off, like, right, have you heard about the transfer admission guarantee program? Is anyone applying to TAG, or applying for fall 2026? If you have any questions around tag, yeah, just curious to see where folks at. Are folks familiar? Any particular schools that you have in mind? Major?
If I can speak out,
Yeah.
if that's okay, great. Yeah. So I've never heard of TAG before. So I saw this like there's a email that I got,
Uh-huh.
and I'll be applying for fall 2026 admission,
So,
this fall.
yeah.
So I was really interested I did not know that there's a transfer admission guarantee program. So I'll be finishing my 30 units, I think, required
So
this summer.
nice.
Um, and yeah, so that's where I'm at currently.
Cool. Exciting. Yeah, specifically, there's a lot of within community college, a lot of different admit like guarantee programs, whether it's getting like for the CSUs, it's like the associate degree for transfer, right? But then for UCs, you have ag programs, right? So there's a lot of different programs dedicated to streamlining that transfer process for community college students. Because they're looking, UCs and CSUs prioritize transfer students. Anyone else see something in the chat? Yeah, like totally encourage like counselors are going to be coming in soon with the semester starting. So I encourage you to connect with your counselor, transfer center, um, to look more into tag. So really, again, kind of as an overview, that today we're gonna be exploring transfer admission guarantee program. My hope is that you become kind of familiar with how it works, eligibility requirements, benefits of tagging. Um, and then we're also going to take a look at the transfer admission planner, so becoming familiar with that and how to use it, right? Because tag is within the transfer admission planner, right? And hopefully at the end, kind of share some resources and hope you all leave kind of empowered to take next steps when it comes to your transfer process. And again, everyone's situation is going to be different and unique. So it really is based on major, the schools that you're interested in. Um, so let's get started. Cool. So first we're going to talk about transfer admission guarantee program. So big question, right? What is UC transfer agreement guarantee? So again, a very unique opportunity for California community college students, right? And it's essentially secured guaranteed admission into one of the 6 participating UC campuses. And we'll go over what those UC campuses are on the next slide. But again, it's as long as you meet the eligibility requirements, you're essentially accepted through tag and have a guaranteed spot in a specific major at that campus. Again, if you are tag eligible, meet the requirements. Some side notes, right? Tag is optional. You can still apply to any UC without using tag. And something else to note is not every major is available for tag at every campus. So that's also another important thing to take a look at. Another note is that you can only submit one tag application to one UC. So determining, right, what is that UC that you're tagging to. And then lastly, right, like an important detail is that the tag application is always due 1 year before your intended transfer term, right? So for students looking at fall 2026, the tag application opens up, and it will be in another slide, but it opens up September 1st through the 30th. So students have 1 month to submit their tag application. So it's important, right, to plan ahead, make sure that you're meeting the requirements for that specific major. Um, and again, it was created to provide this guaranteed path to admission to specific UC campuses and really streamline that transfer process. There's a lot of different ways, right, to get into a UC, and this is one created as like an option, right, to help you move specifically for that major to help students, right? So that's a little bit about tag to keep in mind. Um, so what are the schools, right? Is it really guaranteed transfer admission? So yes, again, fantastic opportunity to take advantage of. Through tag, you have secure guaranteed admission to one of the campuses, and these are the participating campuses. Um, who notices who's off of this list? Who's not on this list? Anyone want to share or put in what schools do they notice are not on the list? If you think back to the UC campuses. Any that, yes, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Berkeley, UCLA, and UC San Diego do not participate in tag, but these 6 universities do. Um, So what's even better about tag, just as a side note, that it's non-binding. So what that means is even though you're accepted through tag, right? You're not required to attend a campus, right? So it can be a very strong backup plan if you are interested in going to Berkeley, San Diego, UCLA, right? And maybe, or maybe your major or school isn't doesn't participate in tag. It's still a very strong backup, right? And it's non-binding, so you can choose to attend another university if needed. But again, as a huge reminder that it really is that you have to meet the eligibility and academic requirements, which we're going to take a look at in a bit, and you can only submit one tag to one UC campus. But you're free to apply through regular UC application. You're free to apply to all the UCs, right? But you can only tag to one. And those are the universities here. Any from this list, any schools that y'all are interested in tagging to? Davis, UCI, Merced, Riverside, Santa Barbara, Santa Cruz. Any school in particular that kind of resonates with any of y'all? Back in the day, I wanted to tag to Davis. And I see a lot of students still, like Davis is very popular, Irvine is very popular. Santa Cruz is very popular. Yeah, Davis. Yeah, Davis is a popular campus. I see a lot of students tag too. So again, can make for a strong backup plan, especially if you're thinking about applying or your top choice is another university that's not on here. Oh, okay. So who can submit a tag? And again, we're going to really go over each of the requirements, but just kind of generally who could submit, who's eligible for tag. Tag is exclusively to students currently attending a California community college. But there's again some limitations around that. So it can't be your second bachelor's degree. So right, it should be your first bachelor's degree that you're seeking. And you must have completed 30 semester units, right? And that's including summer, right? And so for students looking at fall 2026 admission, we want to make sure if you're thinking about tag that you've completed 30 semester units by the end of summer 2025, because then the tag application opens up September 1st, right? Through the 30th. So that's an important piece around like how many credits do you have? So if you have any questions around that, I encourage you to check in with the counselor so we can count how many credits so that we can count if you have AP classes, right, and wanting to count that credit. We want to make sure, right, to double check that you have the 30 semester units needed by the time of the tag application. Um, and then another big piece is that you cannot, if you got accepted into a UC previously, you can't use tag to return. I believe you need to apply to a different UC campus. So again, if you're a community college student, tag can be a great option as long as you meet the criteria. So that's kind of generally who can submit a tag, but again, encourage students to reach out to their counselor, reach out to Transfer Center to really look at specifically, right, your specific situation and the schools that you're interested in. Um, More eligibility requirements that are super critical. Again, the 30 semester UC transferable units, right? So making sure for your classes, is it UC transferable? Because there's some classes that may just be CSU transferable, right? We want to make sure that it's UC transferable and making sure that by September 1st that you have 30 semester units. Another huge piece around tag is, do you meet for your major for that campus? Do you meet a specific GPA criteria, right? Because especially for competitive majors, there's high GPA requirements potentially, right? So we want to take a look at specifically for your school, for your major, if there's a certain GPA requirement. And then looking at the tag matrix, which I attached, right? And that one really breaks it down, but looking at the tag matrix to see if there's any additional requirements. And then another huge piece is by the end of um, what is it, prior to transfer, right, that you've completed 60 transferable units, right, which includes the I get C, right? I get C, it's not Cal get C, it includes your general education, right? So that you've completed the 60 units and that you've completed minimum for UCs, right, is the 2 UC transferable English courses, which is your English 1 and critical thinking English class, 1 UC transferable math course, and then at least 4 transferable courses in art and humanities, social behavioral science, physical and biological sciences, essentially general education, right? So those are some other additional eligibility requirements that we want to take a look at. And again, the tag deadline is September 30th. So students have 1 month, right, to submit their application. And the big thing here is that it very much varies by campus, by major. Is your even major participating in tag and things like that. Um, cool. So the tag matrix. So I shared it in the chat, and I think after the presentation, we can take a look at it again. So I can go to that tab. But essentially, it really again breaks down the tag criteria because as you can see, there's more than just what I mentioned, and we want to make sure that you're on track to complete each of the requirements, that you're eligible, right? But the tag matrix breaks it down. You can download it, you can see the minimum GPA requirements. Um, that is needed to complete tag. You can see how tag applies and important deadlines. And I believe there's links, right? My recommendation is always if you're interested, for example, in Davis, right? Look up tag UC Davis and go straight to the website, right? And really look at your specific program major, right? Because it breaks it down on the website. So I highly recommend if you are thinking about tag that you familiarize yourself with this information, that you check the minimum GPA requirements, um, and check out some of those direct links to the campuses, right? Because it outlines all the important deadlines, dates, contact information, especially if you have questions, there's still time to reach out to admission representatives or tag representatives to learn more. So think of this as like a cheat sheet for tag. So it should definitely be one of the main tools that you use. And the other one is Assist. Because again, as a part of the requirements to meet tag, you need to complete your major prep classes and they refer to assist. Um, I'm assuming again, and I'll once I'm done with the presentation, we can look at assist and look at some examples, but you'd be using assist.org to check what major classes you need to complete at BCC, at Peralta in order to transfer for your major, right? So that's the other piece is that you have to meet the eligibility requirements for tag, but also be on track to complete your major prep classes for your major, right? And that we use Assist. So those are like the two main things. Be familiar with Tag Matrix and be familiar with Assist just to keep track of what classes need to be completed. Um, yes, yeah. So just to reiterate, assist.org helps you stay on track, Tag Matrix, use these tools um, September 1st through the 30th, right, for fall 2026 admission. And again, even after you submit a tag, it's all very much contingent on you maintaining these requirements, right? So using the tag matrix to make sure that you're on track and using these tools together to complete any requirements. So those are like kind of the two. Um, Another thing that I think gets dismissed a lot or we forget, is one of the other requirements that a lot of the UCs have that's super important, is that students need to complete UC English and UC Math by the end of fall 2025. So disregard, sorry, I put this screenshot because it was the only one I could find online, but essentially this is that English needs to be completed by fall 2025 in this case, right? So specifically our English 1 class, right? The first English class needs to be completed as well as math by the end of fall 2025, right? So that's important. And that's why we really stress taking math and English early on so that you're fulfilling these requirements. Because some of the UCs have specific deadlines of when they want students to have completed UCE, which stands for UC English, and UCM, which stands for UC Math. So that's an important thing to note is look at your transcript and just triple check, right, that you've completed your math class and your English class. Because if not, we need to sprinkle that in ASAP. And same thing, right, for UC Math. Um, I'll stop here. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Okay. Well, feel free. I know I may be going through the information a little bit fast, but keep me posted, y'all, if folks have any questions. Just to reiterate again, and this information is on the tag matrix PDF that I shared. But again, some important things. I'm going to reiterate again that you need at least one English class and one math class to be completed by the end of fall 2025. And then completed right with your 60 units and general education um, by the by spring 2026, right? By the end of your journey at BCC or at a community college. Another key is about the unit limits, right? So specifically with TAG, it appears that no campus will allow students to take more than 19 units spring 2026. So your final term, if you still need to reach the 60, if you still need more than 19 transferable units to take in spring, there might be some issues there with TAG, right? Um, so don't I don't recommend overloading, right? Or taking a lot of last minute classes your last semester. Um, and that may pose a risk, right, with your tag eligibility. So if this is the case, if you still have well, right, you have 30 semester units, and if you maybe don't take full-time classes your fall semester and overload all spring, that there may be an issue there. So check in with the counselor if this is your case, right? Um, and again, like the final one being that if you're completed more than 80 semester units of UC transferable work, you may be considered like a high unit student. And for tag purposes, you may not be eligible. So I think tracking and monitoring closely how many units you have, using assist, using the tag matrix to just make sure that you're within the limits. And again, recommend checking in with a counselor, making an appointment if you need any support with that. Um, so yeah, more specific requirements, and it's all listed on that tag PDF matrix. So again, to pursue tag, right? Just to reiterate, important steps, right? You need to fill out your tag application, which is online and inside of the TAP application, the transfer admission planner, right? Which students can already set up an account for that. And we're going to go over TAP in a bit. A lot of acronyms, I know it can get confusing. So apologies if I'm like tag, TAP, It's a lot. But first, right, you submit your tab applic tag application. Oh my gosh, sorry. You submit your tag application online within the UC tab within the window, right, of September 1st through the 30th for fall 2026, right? You make sure, right, after submitting tag application that you're still completing the remaining coursework, you're maintaining the required GPA, that you are completing the requirements specified by the tag agreement. But then the other piece of this is that you still need to apply to the UC, right? You're still doing your UC application. And that officially, between October 1st and November 30th, right, is that application window for the UC application. So I think it's important, um, right, that you're doing tag application, but that the UC application is still required, and that your tag application, whatever major you're tagging to, that UC campus, right, on your UC application, it should match that major. Because if it doesn't match, your tag can be invalidated, right? Can be at risk. So again, wherever you're tagging to should match the major that you're putting on your UC application. Because again, these admission decisions is they're looking and reviewing all of the information that you're providing, right? So again, your tag can be invalidated, right? If and it could be impacted, right? Your eligibility if you're not taking and completing the required courses, if your grades drop, for example, you're not meeting specific deadlines, requirements that can all impact, right, your tag eligibility. So all important things is that essentially when you're tagging to a school, you're still, right, like committed to completing the remaining coursework and maintaining what that required GPA and finishing strong, right? Some common tag I was looking into this and kind of some common mistakes or why tag applications are denied that admission representatives have shared, right? Is again, main one being again like this UC English and math deadline. Each campus has specific deadlines, so check a look at that. But the main thing being they want their first English and the math class completed by the end of fall 2025 if you're looking at fall 2026. But again, I would double check that tag matrix to see if it varies by campus. Um, Another common thing that happens is that students don't submit the UC application, right? The tag application is not the UC application. You still need to submit. You submit your tag, but you still need to submit the UC application by November 30th, right? Another thing is that you're not completing your required major prep classes, right? So use Assist to determine what major classes you need to take, right? Because if those classes are missing, you jeopardize your tag admission, right? So very important to be looking at Assist, checking to make sure that you're on track to complete your major prep classes for whichever major you're planning to tag to. So that's common. I have another one. Yeah, just some other ones, right? Like if you're short units, if changes, right, to the classes that you're taking. Um, Again, if you're listing different majors on tag and UC application, if it doesn't match perfectly, that could jeopardize your tag, not recreating, not completing required classes. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of different things, and know that again, that tag isn't automatic. Um, it's guaranteed, but you got to put in, right, the work, the effort. You have to apply and meet those requirements, right? Um, so again, those are some common things that admission representatives see that I kind of wanted to take note of as you're reviewing your own information, right? Oh, yeah. Like just to reiterate, right, of like folks asking of like submitted a tag. but now you want to change your major after. Can they still tag? So admission representatives note that no, right? Like if your student, if you list a different major in your UC application other than your tag, your tag may become void, right? So that's another important piece to explore. But always, I think, recommend check in with Transfer Center, check in with your counselor, and check in with the tag admissions people at that campus. I could not find the tag decisions when they go out, and this one's like an older one, but I think typically, like Davis does release their decisions earlier, whereas a lot of the universities have different decisions, but it would be within the tag matrix. So maybe we can take a look at that after and check if the decision releases are on there. Um, yeah, so that would be something important to know. And some universities too, they have also spring tag, right? So it's not just fall, but there's also a spring tag filing period or winter quarter. So something else to take a look at if you're interested. Cool. So again, just to reiterate, how to secure your UC tag is setting up that transfer admission planner, keeping it up to date with the courses, doing the research, right? I think planning ahead, that's going to be important, noting all the different requirements, and selecting and reflecting on, well, which campus are you choosing to tag to, right? So, because again, there are some majors that are excluded from tag. So double check if your major is included or excluded, right? And then double check from there. And then, of course, recommend schedule an appointment with the counselor. We could really tailor your ed plan and really look at the different tag requirements and really target the campus that you're looking at. Um, is the tag really guaranteed? I was looking into this, y'all, and I think um again, what the UC system shares is yes, but with some conditions, right? That if you meet all tag criteria and that you're completing your required major prep courses and maintaining that specific, like whatever specific GPA that you have, if you're maintaining that, meeting the deadlines, submitting your UC application on time, that it is guaranteed transfer admission. And again, tag is essentially that contract between you and the university outlining that these, like you're meeting the requirements, but that these are the additional classes that you're going to take, and that you follow through, right, with this contract to have your spot secure. So I think there's a lot of different things that can happen, especially if your major is super competitive, right? Like there's so many different pieces. So I definitely encourage you all to check in with your counselor, check in with the transfer center, or the admissions team to kind of learn more. But again, tag is that guarantee, right? But that it's also that commitment that you take on, right? That you're going to complete these requirements. Um, yeah, so it offers you that guarantee to that specific campus for that specific major. And important deadlines, again, being you submit tag for fall, September 1st through the 30th, and then that you apply to the UC right application, and that deadline would be November 30th. So these deadlines are coming up, y'all. So I think the thing that you can do now is setting up your planner, which I think is what we are moving on to next. Any questions, concerns? We're going to revisit tag. I have specific questions, some activity, doing some research with tag matrix and assist. But anything coming up for y'all right now?
Uh, yes, I actually have a question about the units. So you said we have to complete 30 units
Mhm.
that are UC transferable, but also you mentioned 60 units as well. So I
Yeah.
was kind of confused because I currently have 31 units completed that are UC transferable, but I need 60, right?
Yeah, by the end of spring 2026,
Right.
you would need 60. Yeah.
Okay. Makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, sorry it could be confusing. By now, right, to be able to apply, you need the 30 units. And by the end, right, of your last semester, which in this case, let's say if you're applying for fall 2026, so by the end of spring 2026, you need to have completed at least 60 units, UC.
Okay.
So that's going to be a mix of your major classes plus general education.
Okay.
Great question. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns? Cool. Now we're going into the transfer admission planner. Thumbs up. Anyone have their transfer admission planner set up? I know sometimes in some of the classes, like college success classes, that's like an assignment students get around like setting up an account. Anyone have their transfer admission planner? Oh, let me look at the chat. Not yet. Okay, yeah. And it's not too late, right? So that's going to be an important piece, is starting your transfer admission planner. And heck, you can be doing that right now. Set up your account, use an email. Oh, that's another thing. Whatever your account is for the transfer admission planner, make sure that's the same email that you're using for your UC application, because you can connect your transfer admission planner to the UC application. That way you don't have to be repeating the same information. So kind of to transition around like the transfer admission planner, what is it? So some important things to consider is essentially the transfer admission planner is a tool used by the UCs where you can plan and track your coursework and transfer progress, right? So I think that is a very cool thing and why I recommend students, especially if you're interested in the UCs, to set up your transfer admission planner so you can kind of keep track of the classes that you're taking. Of course, not a replacement for meeting with a counselor. That's still super important. But again, it's a helpful way for you to keep track, right, of your coursework. And we encourage that students set this up as early as possible because it's specifically designed for community college students and you can link it to your UC application. So this is kind of more information around like the benefits of having a transfer planner set up. Again, I think main thing being that you can track your classes, but I think something neat is that it links with assist.org, right? So it's already integrated. So that could be like an easy way to check if your courses are the equivalent, right? It allows you to also keep track of non-community college, California community college courses. You keep track if you're meeting general ed requirements. Also, UC campuses, I believe, can communicate or share information so you can learn more about specific UC events through the admission planner. Um, so a lot of different benefits. And I think the main, also another cool thing is that you can track your UC GPA, right? Which can be different from like your cumulative GPA, right? Because if you're taking classes that are maybe just CSU transferable, that could be different from like your UC GPA, right? So I think that's neat about like the admission planner is that you can check like you have a GPA calculator there. So again, helps you stay informed, organized, connected, and I think important if you're thinking about UC transfer. So again, not too late to set that up now. But also, oh my gosh, the most important piece is that within the admission planner is the tag. Because tag is like just a section on there, low key. Cool. But again, kind of step by step of like you set up your account, right? You enter your personal information, you enter your coursework. So it keeps track, right, of the classes that you're taking. So I always recommend of like each semester you have a habit, right, of like inputting your classes that you just completed and doing it that way. But if you haven't set up an account, again, not too late, have a copy of your unofficial transcript and class by class, input it in. It calculates your GPA. It's connected with assist.org. And within the tag, within the admission planner, you can select your tag campus and submit that specific part. And what's neat is that, again, if you use the same email for your UC application, your academic history from TAP gets saved into your UC admission planner, which I think is cool because in that way you don't have to manually input all your classes again, which can be super annoying. And this is how it looks like a little bit. So UC TAP, again, it's organized into all these different sections. So you input your personal information if you're a part of any support programs. But then like the academic history, that second part, I think is like the more critical piece, right? Of like you're gonna put the schools that you attended, right? So in this case, if we're looking at Peralta, Berkeley City, Merritt, College of Alameda, Laney, you'd enter in your coursework, any exams that you want to provide, whether it's AP credit earned in high school. And then the last piece is your transfer plan. So again, within the admission planner, you can specifically, the tag application is there. So it looks like this. And I think the big piece is I think like entering each of your courses. So I always encourage students like check in with the counselor before, I mean, I'll mention this at the end, but before submitting anything, I really encourage you all check in with the counselor, have someone review the information that you're provided, your coursework, so that you don't have to submit it on your own. But again, a helpful way to stay organized, and you can set that up now if you haven't done so already.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
What if I think you've mentioned it before. What if you've taken when you were in high school, a class at BCC, for example,
Mhm.
and will the units that were part of that class will they count as part of the 60 units that need to be done to transfer or?
Yeah, totally. So when you were a high school student, you took college classes at BCC?
Yeah, I took an English class, yes.
Yeah, totally. If it's UCCSU, you totally get those credits that count towards the 16.
Okay, you I don't think that works. Okay,
Um,
thank
and
you.
is it, I mean, as long as it's on your transcript, right? You
It
can
is
include
on the right.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because when you're manually entering in your classes, that's why I'm like, have all your transcripts and you're starting from the beginning.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. Cute. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns around tag or tap? Thoughts? Okay. And I know we don't have a whole lot of time. So I'm trying to think. So main being I had some activities, right? So one being, right, thinking about, well, what UC campus are you planning to tag to? What major will you tag to? Is it available? What's your current GPA? How does it compare to the requirement? So that's kind of like a personal piece if you kind of want to start reflecting and exploring assist, the UC tag matrix to kind of explore your specific tag school, the requirements, or starting to log in to your TAP account and creating one, right? And looking at the different pieces. So those are some activities and these are some resources. We'll be sharing the presentation at the end, the recording as well. But now I'm going to stop share and then I'm going to share my screen again because I want to review the matrix together because it could be, even as a counselor, like there's just so much information on there that can be um, intimidating to kind of like review. But it looks like this, right? So this is what I shared in the chat. And So again, kind of like an overview of the tag criteria, right? If your reasons why you may not be eligible for tag. But then this is the breakdown. And I think this is what, with students, what I recommend, right? So for example, I heard a lot of students mention Davis, right? So with Davis, it breaks it up of like the terms that they accept tag, right? So Davis, for example, just accepts fall quarter only. So the filing would be September 1st through the 30th. Is it guaranteed, right? Like it says yes, provided all tag requirements are completed. And what's excluded? So in this case for Davis, undeclared majors, computer science, data science, landscape architecture. So these majors would be excluded from tag, right? And then I always recommend to look at this, right? Like type in, like if you need support, right, and finding an advisor to learn more about tag, or you have any specific questions, or heck, I'd be looking at like UC Davis tag, tag admission guarantee, and then it breaks it down as well because we want to double check specifically for your major what those requirements are, right? So again, UC Davis, and I'm just using this as an example, but computer science and data science are excluded, but then you can check here, right? The different requirements for Davis. So again, transfer admission planner, checking in with your counselor, submitting it by September 30th, and then specific conditions around the enrollment, the units, the coursework, and things like that. If there's any restrictions, but also if your major is selective, right? Competitive. So for example, let's see, what's a good example? Right, like there's just specific, like minimum 2.0 GPA for admission, but for tag, we're looking at 3.20 for all majors, right? So definitely always recommend to check the specific campus, but then you can also look up the GPAs here. It's at the bottom. So again, for Davis and for each of the campuses, you can check based on what what college your major is in, you can see what the GPA requirement is, which seems to be 3.2, but if it's within College of Engineering, it's higher, right? And it needs to be your GPA by end of summer 2025. So there's additional, these are kind of like the minimum GPA requirements. So double check this because it has just so much information. So that has to do with like the GPA, but then checking assist, right? So checking assist based on like Berkeley City College. We've been using the Davis example. So you would view the agreement. Let's put psychology. So reading, of course, all the fine print, right? It looks like it's a selective major, so we want to make sure and see what are the specific requirements for psych. It looks that it's guaranteed admission into Davis, but we want to make sure that you're completing, right, the classes under BCC, right? So making sure in this scenario, right, in this example, that you're taking Psych 1A, you're taking statistics, complete A, B, C, or D, right? So you have some options there and any other major requirements. So that's the important piece. And if your major is selective, checking the website to see what those minimum requirements are. So in this case, like psychology is within College of Letters and Science. So we would go to psychology, and this is what we want to make sure, right? Complete the courses below and maintain a 2.9 GPA across psych, stats, and a biological science class. So we want to make sure you're taking these classes at BCC. And that again was just an example for Davis for psychology. It really again varies by major, and if it's included or excluded from tag. I'll stop here. I know it's a lot of information, But I do encourage you all, like, to review, start your TAP if you haven't, review the tag requirements for your specific major. And again, if you're not eligible, you can still apply, right? You can still apply to all the UCs that you want. But checking assists and check in with a counselor, can't stress that enough, of checking in with the counselor or transfer center to really review specifically for your major what those requirements are. So I'll stop there. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? What are y'all's majors? I'm curious. I forgot to ask that in the beginning. Do folks want to share in the chat? Psych! Oh my gosh, perfect example. Oh my gosh, not there being too psych. Yeah, psychology, political science. Okay, those are, I think, like popular tag majors. For sure. Cool. Well, I'll hang out for a bit if folks want to ask any questions, concerns. We'll follow up with the recording as well as the presentation, any information. And don't hesitate to reach out. Wherever you are in the process, here to support with whatever y'all need.